be a train wreck. It could be brilliant.
It'll probably be brilliant.
Yeah. Welcome back to Bandwagon fans. This is Jeff, and I'm joined by
Scott.
And we're not going to be talking about any specific movie. We're actually going to kind of have a meta conversation about the act of discussing movies. Right before we went on camera, I said this could either be a train wreck or it could be brilliant. And Scott said...
I said something brilliant.
Yeah,
it'll probably be brilliant.
Scott voted for brilliant, and
I'm pulling for brilliant.
we're not launching. We're like the 3 flights before the Wright brothers right now.
I think you're right. So, we're critiquing criticism.
Yeah.
I don't know how interesting that is.
I know it's something you and I are both interested in.
Yeah.
And so this is, you and I have talked about 3 movies together. We reviewed 3 movies. That was I Love Simon was the first one.
Right.
And as we were driving out of the theater parking lot, you had mentioned that just the act of reviewing a movie, knowing you're going to review it, changes the way you view that movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the jumping off points for this discussion is I kind of want to have a discussion about what each individual brings to the movie viewing experience and how that changes your perception of the movie. The other movies we've done was Avengers Infinity War, and we came at that movie from diametrically opposed places. The guy last superhero movie was Michael Keaton Batman, right, versus guy who's seen every MCU movie at least twice, if not 3 or 4 times. And then we just did a review of Tully, and we came at that from slightly different perspectives, although we kind of were pretty much aligned on that.
It's I think similar conclusions.
Yeah.
For Tully.
And then right before we filmed this, we watched Childish Gambino or Donald Glover's This Is America. And this was your first time seeing This Is America.
First time I looked at it.
I've seen it a few times in the last few days. And earlier today I watched a reaction video. And I'll try to find the link again, and I'll put the link to that video in the comments or in the description. That was a video about 2 white guys reacting to This Is America. And one of the gentlemen, and both of them were put their best foot forward to understand what Donald Glover was saying. But one of the gentlemen kept saying, I think he's referring to black on black crime. Like all the stuff going on in that video, that's what he saw. So which I didn't see it at all. So the point being, everybody comes at movies with a different perspective and takes something different from those movies. You were talking earlier about film school, mm-hmm. and can you want to relay kind of what you learned in film school about how different people view films?
Yeah, I think that this is partially what I learned a long time ago in film school, and also partially what I've sort of gathered along the way. So it's sort of a synthesis of those 2 things. But 80% of people, maybe 90% of people, and me sometimes, I'm guessing you sometimes, mm-hmm. we just go to the movie to be entertained and we're not going to spend a lot of time sort of thinking about it. We'll have some critical analysis when we go in, but we're not sort of going to participate in the critical analysis of it. The other 10% of people, most of the time, go in with a different set of criteria for what's going to be enjoyable for them in watching a movie, and those are the people who ultimately do some form of criticism. That criticism may happen at a coffee house, it may happen at a bar.
It may happen on Bandwagon fans on YouTube.
It could happen on Bandwagon fans on YouTube. It could happen in the parking lot or on the drive home or whatever. And that requires in some way a different mindset when you walk into the theater. And for me, my wife Anna gets on me about this all the time. It's like, can't you just let the movie be a movie? But I can't ever let the movie just be a movie. You know, it's the cigar is not just a cigar for me. The movie is not just a movie. We talked about a movie that we've seen recently, Tully, and I mentioned to you the very first frame of the first scene. When I saw it, the first thought that I had was, I'm going to like this movie because I liked the way it was framed. I like the way it was lit. It appeals to a certain sort of aesthetic sensibility that I have, and that was my mindset.
And it was just a staircase inside somebody's house.
Yeah, it was just a staircase inside somebody's house, and I thought, I think I'm gonna like this. I didn't know for sure, but I was pretty sure at that point that it's like, oh, this filmmaker works in, you know, a set of sensibilities that kind of works for me. And I was thinking about sort of beyond the film school thinking, something that I hear people talking about sometimes with hallucinogenic experiences, interesting enough, which is set and setting, right? So set is the mindset that you walk in with, which is everything that you bring, every movie you've ever seen, everything that you ever thought, every lustful thought that you had about that actor or actress, every movie you saw them in that you didn't like before, you know, all of those things, that's your mindset coming in. And then the setting is basically, it's the theater, but the setting is really what the director of the movie and the actors in the movie and the producers and the unit production managers, what all those people give you. And what happens is, I think there's a conversation between those two things. So it's like you love Christopher Walken or you hate Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken comes on the scene and he does something brilliant. You either, if you hate him, you have to decide, well, it's okay. You know, I actually kind of like him in this. I don't like him most of the time otherwise. Or you go, I hate him anyways. He could do, you know, he could be great. I'm not going to like that. And so the first thing that we have to like get over in that analysis is like what we walk in with, like all of the impediments, like those two people that you were talking about, all of their impediments to kind of thinking about it, realizing we will never ever get outside of that box. We'll always carry that box with us. But if we're going to really do analysis of the film, the best thing is to try as much as we can to sort of at least make that box big.
Yeah, so you kind of sparked a thought in my mind. In my college days, one of my English classes, the instructor was talking about literary criticism, and she was saying that every interpretation of a work of art is equally valid. Whatever you think the book is about, whatever you think the poem was about, is true.
Right.
And I said poppycock.
Okay.
I rejected that. Ultimately, I think art is a conversation, is a dialogue. And you have to start with whoever created that work of art, whether it's a film or a painting or something, that person had something he or she was trying to say. So the first thing you as an audience has to do is try to understand what that person was trying to say. From there, you can say how it relates to you, and you can reject or accept it. But you have to start with what the person's intent was. You know, we were talking about Tully earlier, and I have my crazy Marxist socioeconomic theories about what the movie was about, and you had mentioned the way I talk about movies in general maybe goes layers that the movie maker didn't intend. Mm-hmm. And that's something I have to keep in mind. That might not have been a Marxist statement about modern society, but...
Can I say something about that, though?
Yeah.
As somebody who actually has made narrative films, I've made a lot of them. I've done more documentary than narrative, but I've done a few narrative. And I think I mentioned in a review recently the kinds of films that tens of people have seen. So, you know, but I've done that, and I've had people come up to me and say, man, dude, that symbolism was crazy with the snake and the rock. And I thought, wow, that's good, because it leaked out. Like, I didn't mean the symbolism for the snake and the rock, but actually the snake in the rock meant something to somebody. So I actually, and this may be just a little like sort of like, you know, beyond the pale just a little bit, but I think sometimes things come out that the filmmaker didn't even necessarily intend that still end up being important, and that the audience, so that's where the audience's view is valid.
Oh yeah.
They will find those things.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to say my view isn't valid. My view is always valid.
Right.
But I'm
almost
saying,
as valid as my view.
But I'm saying in the discipline of rhetoric, first you have to understand what the other person is saying. Then you can say what it means to you. You just like if you were writing something where and the snake in the rock meant fire and water, I can't say, well, you were actually saying it meant money and gold.
Right.
You know, I have to understand what you were saying. I've actually mentioned this in a couple reviews where I've mentioned I don't think the filmmakers really understood what they were trying to say. They understood they had a thing, they had something in mind, they had something they wanted to say. And this is something everybody can relate to, where you have something just on the tip of your tongue.
Right. Yeah.
Filmmakers have that too. Where like I know there's something I'm trying to say, but I don't quite know what it is.
Right.
And sometimes the audience member can say, "Man, you were this close," and I got the gist of what you were saying.
Tully might have been like that. I mean, Tully was brilliant.
Yeah.
But it almost.
Yeah.
Like we walked out going, I almost got it. Like what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
Jason Reitman, right?
Yeah.
What he was trying to say was right on the tip of my tongue. I can't quite get my brain around it.
Yeah. When you mentioned this, right? He also did Juno.
Right.
Yeah. So he might have a thing about doing movies about pregnancy and.
Yeah. No animated open on this one.
No.
Your conversation about rhetoric and understanding like what the filmmaker was trying to say is, and I'm kind of a film snob, so I'm right there too, but that's very highbrow, and it's something we think about, but it's very, for both of us, I mean, that's kind of a highbrow thing.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind that what you were talking about earlier, what your literature teacher was saying, that every viewpoint, every access to this film is valid. Everything that somebody thinks about the film is equally valid. I think maybe your teacher said, right, is equally valid. So take a Melissa McCarthy movie.
I'd rather not.
Okay, right.
Not this week.
But there are people who have seen the Melissa McCarthy movie that's out and said, and we know people who've said, that was really entertaining.
Oh, I experienced it this week.
Yeah.
And so I saw Melissa McCarthy's Life of the Party.
Right.
And I'm in this theater. It was an advanced screening, and I literally thought I was being gaslit, because I watched one of the dumbest movies I've ever seen. But I was in a packed theater, and everybody thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. And I'm like, what? I'm literally looking around going, what the F are you people laughing at? Because this is stupid.
So, are their laughs valid?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, they were, and one of our good friends, I won't say her name because she didn't approve that, but I did see it with her and a couple of her friends. And she was like, she's like, I get everything you're saying, but it connected with me. Right. And if a movie for me that really connected strongly with me recently was Overboard. I recognize, and most people are saying Overboard was overrated and should not have been made at all. It just connected me on an incredibly deep level, because it to me it represented a little time capsule of the resistance against white nationalism, which is probably way more.
I've not seen that movie, but that's a movie about the resistance against white nationalism?
Yeah. And I guarantee you the filmmakers did not have that in mind. But they're operating within a time and space where that is the dialogue.
Okay.
And they may not have intentionally set out to make that movie, but that's the movie they made.
It fit in the space.
And I recognized it.
So that's setting.
Yeah.
Like that's everything that the movie is setting against in your mindset that you came in with. I was thinking about a conversation that we had in the men's room about the new Mamma Mia movie coming out. And you said to me that that's one of the movies that you are least looking forward to because you don't like ABBA.
So I hate ABBA for two reasons.
Okay.
One, because they suck, and it's just the most contrived music ever. And two, because my sisters like to remind me that when I was a kid, I would sing ABBA.
That's great.
So I hate ABBA.
But let's talk about that. So because you'll probably review that movie for
Yes, I
Bandwagon
will.
fans,
Yeah.
because you're a diligent reviewer of films.
That's what I
and you go
do.
to what's out there. It's going to be hard for you to like that film. It's going to be difficult for you to say something positive about that film.
I'll say it's lit well.
Yeah, you can find some things. I like musicals, and I kind of like ABBA. So, I'm immediately predisposed when I walk in to forgive the movie a lot of flaws. And I did forgive the movie a lot of flaws on the movie Mamma Mia, and I've even seen the play, right? So that's going to inform our criticism when we walk in, and that's about set. Mm-hmm. That's your mindset, and that's my mindset, because I'm coming in thinking, God, this is going to be kind of fun, and you're coming in saying, this is going to be a train wreck.
This is going to be torture.
It's going to be
torture for me.
Right.
So before we recorded this video, we were actually talking about how we have no clue what we're going to say. This is just we're just dialogue. We didn't sketch this out. We didn't do any notes. This is just contemporaneous discussion about talking, which is something we both vastly enjoy doing.
Can you tell?
But you just sparked something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and that is movies that are made for a particular audience.
Sure.
Mamma Mia, I am not the target audience for Mamma Mia.
I'm barely. I mean, I truly am. I'm barely the audience for it.
Right now, there's traditionally, I think it's fair to say that most Hollywood movies were made for a white American, predominantly male audience. That is who they were catered to. And generally, what's the term for the golden age of like 18 to 34 or something? Right.
I'm not sure where you're going for now, but that
demographic. So most movies are made for that particular demographic.
18-year-old dudes.
Yeah.
And 13-year-old dudes. More increasingly, they've sort of if you think your movies are getting dumber, it's because
of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's the movie that created the PG-13 rating.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, I learned things.
I watched a lot of YouTube.
I'm open to learning something.
And I'm 99% sure of that. If I'm wrong, the 5 people watching this will let us know. But right now there's a splintering of media in general between different, whether it's streaming or television, and we've talked about how some of the top TV shows, I couldn't name one of them. I couldn't tell you what the top 5 shows are right now.
I have no idea. Is Modern Family still on? That would be my guess.
I thought Modern Family was canceled 3 years ago. Yeah. But then just within movies, which they're starting to cater to particular audiences. So Pacific Rim Uprising was an American movie, but it was made 100% for a Chinese audience. And they knew who their audience was. They made it for that audience. Overboard, which I mentioned earlier, is made for a bilingual audience. It is not for the general American audience. It is for people that regularly watch telenovelas on Telemundo. And that's kind of, and then with what I'm doing as far as criticism, is it fair for me to go into a Mamma Mia and critique that film knowing that I'm not the target audience.
Right.
Tyler Perry's Acrimony, I was not the target audience for that movie. Is it fair for me to critique it?
I think it is. And I think that we just did a review of Tully, and we're actually probably the target audience. Kind of liberal, NPR listening. I don't know if you listen to NPR. I listen to NPR. People who listen to podcasts, that sort of.
I'm more of a Young Turks audience member.
Right. You're a little more radical than we old people. So, but when we sat down, one of the first things that we said is that we have blind spots. Mm-hmm. We're going to have blind spots. I'm sure we have probably shown 5 of our blind spots just in the last 10 minutes of doing this, right? I think going in with, this is going to sound weird, but actually going in with a good heart and saying, I'm going to try to accurately tell you what I thought about this film, understanding that it comes from a unique perspective, which is mine. So that's from my mindset only. And I hope that's helpful to people. I don't know that you can do much more than that.
Right.
But I think, is there any reason why you couldn't watch, what's something like a movie for kids and critique a movie for kids? Like that, I don't think you have to have a kid critique that movie. It's helpful to have a kid critique that movie. But you can have something to say about that.
So actually, the example you just brought up, to me, is the reductio ad absurdum.
Okay.
Because that's where, no, I shouldn't be reviewing a movie for kids, because I have, our sensibilities are so different. And, sure, I can have a conversation about, I don't even know what a kid's show is. I was just at a birthday party a couple weeks ago, and there was, it was the child's first birthday, so the stuff on the TV was I don't even know what it was. I shouldn't be critiquing that, because...
But if you instead of reductio ad absurdum, if you go the other direction, you could never critique anything. At some point, you would just be like, I'm not the right guy to critique this movie. I'm not a pregnant woman. I can't do Tully, but you can.
But with Tully specifically, and you haven't seen my review of it, but I actually brought out my cats, and I did this whole thing about talking about how when I got my second cat, how stressed out I was because it wouldn't let me sleep.
I bet that went over well with pregnant women.
Oh, they haven't, for the 10 people that are going to see that.
Right.
But it was my access point to relate to that movie.
Right.
Otherwise, not having kids of my own, I wouldn't be able to relate to it. But I get your point that there's always, even if you're not part of the target audience, you still have something you can say about it.
Right.
But there comes a point where you're so far out of the target audience that what you're saying becomes, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where the artist is trying to say one thing and you're critiquing something completely different.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm thinking about how, let's say that you're somebody who operates through life in a wheelchair. You can't say that the only movies you can critique are going to be movies about people in wheelchairs, because there aren't very many movies, and you're going to see a lot more movies than that, even though your take on life may be uniquely formed by that experience. I just think that it's worth being honest when you come in and say, not a 13-year-old kid, but I kind of liked it, and here's what I saw, and I noticed that there were kids who were enjoying it, and maybe you could talk to them and find out sort of what they wanted. So I don't think that you have to stay arm's length from that kind of criticism. I just think that it always requires a certain humility that you won't get it. You'll never totally get it. You'll never totally get what the filmmaker doesn't even totally get. We
Right.
talked about this before.
Yeah.
The filmmaker doesn't even totally get what they're trying to do. It's still okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
So
It was a discussion about discussions, and I think we achieved that objective. We talked a lot about talking.
yeah,
So
we were metacritical.
yeah. So hopefully, for anybody who got to watch this, you got something out of it. Please leave your comments below. Particularly, what you were saying earlier about the 90% that watches a movie for one reason, and the 10% that watch it to really because they want to talk. Because how did you phrase it? They're really interested in the process, the critical analysis.
I mean, they walk in already before the first credit goes. They're thinking about the process, and they want to know what the director was thinking and what the actors are thinking.
And obviously, you can kind of guess. You already said you're in the 10%. Obviously, I'm in that 10% as well. That's why I started this channel. I remember watching, IMDb used to have a comment section. They've taken the comment section down because it was as bad as the internet could possibly get.
Yeah.
But I would watch a movie and then immediately go to the IMDb comment section because I wanted to know what other people had seen that I missed. I really missed the comment section of IMDb. Then for me, YouTube replaced that. I'd watch a movie and then I'd go to YouTube and I'd watch 15, 20 reviews because I wanted to hear what people thought about it. And then I said, screw that. I just want to tell people what I think.
Right.
Can
I ask you something about that, by the way? So, do you have a particular tool set? If you want to think about films in an anthropological way, is there a particular tool set that you come in with to do that? I mean, what are you sort of holding the film up against?
So, thank you. I like that question. And hopefully the camera doesn't shut off while I'm answering this. I do have a degree in anthropology. And one of the mantras of anthropology is to make the familiar, or to make the familiar strange and the strange familiar. So I just bring that mindset of digging, another mantra is making the implicit explicit, of digging in and finding out the underlying thing that somebody's trying to say and bringing that to the forefront. Mm-hmm. So that's one tool set I have. I'm also well versed in a lot of economic theory and social theory. So, like earlier, I did a review on Bad Samaritan, which is a god-awful movie, but I was able to link pop culture comics to feminist film theory. And that's kind of, for me, where that juxtaposition is of linking specific culture to a more general culture. So thanks for giving me that layup. I appreciate that.
Well, it's interesting because you come at it. We'll go see the same film, walk away with a similar experience of it because we kind of like some of the same things.
Yeah.
But no, our Venn diagram has some gaps in it too. And then we talk about it, and it's like, wow, I think you saw a totally different movie than I saw. Which makes it kind of fun, really.
Definitely makes it fun. So I'm going to toss it back to you.
Okay.
Now you're an experienced filmmaker. Same question to you. What do you bring to the art of looking at movies?
Yeah. So I tend to think about. It's funny. I tend to think about how would I do it, which doesn't say that I'm doing Hollywood movies, but even so, I look at an angle and think, well, why did they do that angle? And sometimes they say, well, I probably would. The house in Tully, I said, I think as a director, I would have made a little different decision about the house that they lived in. So I tend to think about it kind of from that standpoint. I can see in my head, because I've been around big production, done some television commercials and things like that where it's cranes and stuff like that, and so I'm really familiar with that. So sometimes I'm just like, how did they do that? how did they get that one shot? And so I'm thinking about when we talked about the Avengers, and I was thinking about like, oh, that must have been so tightly storyboarded. So to me, I can kind of back into like the process of making the film a little bit. But when I'm being critical of it, or doing some kind of mental criticism, I start from, did I like it?
Right.
That's the first thing. And then, was it meaningful? Will I still be thinking about it? Tully, I'll still be thinking about. Love, Simon, I wasn't still thinking about a couple days later. There's some films that really engage me and some films that sort of leave me. It doesn't mean that they're a bad film. They just sort of fit into, that sort of space in my life. And then ultimately, did it have an important message of some kind? Even if the important message was just, you guys should all laugh for a while and get away, like that's okay too. But did it, and if that was the message, did it do that? And so that's what I look for.
All right, so at this point, we talked about the clip running out at 20 minutes. We didn't talk about the battery dying.
Right.
So we actually just recorded a conclusion, and that's all scrapped. I'll go
it was
back
amazing.
So if you've stuck around to the end of this far, the very end is going to get kind of choppy, and that's part of filmmaking. But I just want to thank everybody for sticking through to this point. This was kind of a fun conversation for us.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got something out of it. Feel free to leave your comments below. And I have no idea at this point how much we lost, but we are going to wrap up the conversation here. And I'm Jeff.
I'm Scott.
This is Bandwagon Fans. Get on the bandwagon.